So now we're going to go into question 7, which is one on income tax and national insurance. And I will admit this is not my favourite question. So this person called Zainab works part-time. She earns £12,500 a year, and in part A we're being asked to find how much she earns in a year after tax and national insurance contributions. So the information on tax and national insurance is in the data booklet, and we can see this year the personal allowance was £12,500, so she will pay no income tax. And for this specimen question paper, they wanted you to state that she pays zero tax or zero income tax. How that would work in a real SQA question paper that people actually sat as an exam, I don't know, because those are checked over more thoroughly. So now we need to do the national insurance, which is the harder part of the question. So we can see that it's 12% of the earnings between £166 and £962. The first we'll have to work out the weekly income to determine which national insurance band she goes into. So we divide by 52 and we get £240 and 38 pence. So it will only be that lower band of the 12%. And national insurance is slightly odd that the higher parts of the income are taxed at a lower rate. So it's we take away the £166 and find 12%, and we will get the weekly national insurance of £8.93. Finally, we get the national insurance paid in a single year, and then take that away from her gross salary, and that will answer the question. So annual national insurance is equal to £464.16, and so her net earnings are £12,500, take away £464.16 to give £12,035.84. But on to the part of the question which I really don't like, just because it's tricky. So she gets 25 days annual leave, but she works part-time, so she only gets 3/5 of those. Now we saw earlier in the question that she only works 3 days a week. So if she worked full-time, she would get 25 divided by 5, which would be 5 weeks. She still gets 5 weeks holiday, because 3/5 of 25 days would be 15 days, which is still 5 weeks each of 3 days. So we need this for the number of weeks she works in a year, because that's the easiest way to work it out, I think. That's the 3 days a week there. So we start by saying how many weeks a year she works, and we can assume 52 weeks in a year, so 47 weeks. We need to work out her costs. So she has £45 a day for childcare, £10 a day per travel. Add those together and then multiply by the number of days she works. So 47 weeks, 3 days a week, and then multiply by 55. So it looks like that. And at the end, we should find she has annual costs of her childcare and travel of £7,755. Now, normally that kind of cost is not included in income deductions. We just call it a cost. So we can now find her annual earnings, and they're calling it earnings, using our answer from part A, and then we take away the costs. And then finally, to finish this, we'll divide the answer by 12. And it is a fiddly question, to be honest. You are probably just better off persevering with it yourself and trying to make sense of it, and find out where you go wrong, and that's what you need to learn. So now in part C we're doing something similar again. there's this new potential salary of £24,450, and we need to find her monthly take-home salary after her costs and her deductions. So we'll have to consider income tax, national insurance, and her costs. So let's start with national insurance because that's the easier one. So again, it is weekly information on national insurance. So we divide by 52 and get her weekly salary. Threshold is between £166, and she doesn't quite reach the higher threshold. So we need to find 12% of that number, take away 166. So we get £36.50 per week. Then we work it out annually. So don't try and go from weekly to monthly, even though the question tells us finally we look at months, because it's easy to work with 52 weeks in a year and 12 months in a year. So multiply by 52 and we get £1,898.16 national insurance contributions per month. So now we're going to work out the income tax, which we didn't need to do before, but we do now because she earns above the personal allowance. Now in this data booklet, there are these annoying gaps which have caused no end of grief in the higher applications of mathematics community, such as it is. So you can see it says 12,500, but then the starter rate starts at £12,501. So there's a gap of £1. Now it seems that in the real SQA exams they don't have those gaps of £1. Maybe at some point in time this is how the information has been presented on the Scottish Government web pages, but you could also call this early instalment weirdness for this course. So I think it makes sense to use the upper thresholds, the 12,500, the 14,549, and if we need to, the £24,944. Although this will make our answers slightly different to the ones in the marking scheme, just by a few pence. So we will have two different tax calculations, one for each band of tax. So the one at the lower band of tax will be worked out on £2,049. That's the £14,549 take away £12,500, and that's going to be taxed at 19%. We'll do that later, but let's first of all work out how much we need to pay at the next rate of tax, which is the 20%. So we need to use the actual earnings, the 24,450, and not the upper limit, the 24,944, which is a common mistake. And then we take away the lower limit of that tax band. Now, I believe the SQA marking scheme has used the 14,550. We'll try and be consistent. We'll use the 14,549, just because in real life you wouldn't have that pound, which was tax-free. So this would come out as £9,901, which would be at 20%. So we can straightforwardly work out 19%, which is £389.31, and the 20%, which is £1,980.20. And finally we need to add up these two numbers to get the total income tax paid. So that will be £2,369.61 for the income tax. £2,369.51. So we're nearly there. Now we need to work out the costs, then we'll work out annual take-home salary. Finally we'll work out her monthly take-home salary and compare that to her monthly take-home salary from the previous question. So the expenses. This time she's working 5 days a week, still 47 weeks a year, and those expenses of £55. So she will have expenses of £12,925. That's quite a lot, isn't it? So finally, the annual take-home pay, we need to take the £24,450 and take away the three different numbers. Now I'm not going to bother writing them out again. Just highlight them and say take away national insurance, income tax and expenses. That gives you £7,257.33. So you could divide that by 12, divide the previous answer by 12 and then take the difference, or maybe one step shorter is take the difference first to find how much extra she earns in a year, then divide that by 12. It's the same thing. So take away the answer from part B, the £4,280.84, and then divide by 12. And is it not going to be greater than £248? Well, yes it is. So she is correct. And why is she correct? Because £248.04 is greater than £248. So that's just finally done. And that was a difficult question to get through, but we got there in the end. And you can see it's all stuff that you can manage. Just need to be careful and check your work carefully. So now on to part D, state 2 reasons she might accept their promotion. Is this really part of the course? Why people would accept promotions? I don't know. Basically, you've just got to make something up. So why would she accept the promotion? Well, she makes more money. So you could say that. She will earn more money. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? Another reason, well, apart from the money, it's giving her more life experience. She's exposed to different challenges. It's helping her grow as a person. So you could say something like that. She will gain more work experience, which will help her in her career, or in her work career, job prospects. And that's finally done.